Good afternoon, good evening, everybody, and good morning, probably, depending on where everybody's coming to us from. I think we've got about 6 different time zones involved today, so I certainly do appreciate your time. I'm Doug Jury. We're going to go ahead and kick this off. So go ahead and find your seat in the virtual classroom, pour yourself a fresh cup of coffee or an iced tea, and we will be back with you in just about a minute. Thank you so much for joining. Okay, I see we're right about at the top of the hour. I'm going to wait just another minute while people kind of get settled into the virtual console here. I do appreciate everybody's attention on this call. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll go ahead and kick this off in just a minute as we start to see people trickling into the virtual classroom. I hope everybody has a great hour here with us. We've got a lot of great material, and I've got, trying to get you folks to think about things in just a little bit different manner, a little different way of thinking about things that you've probably thought about, for most of your professional careers. We're now going to kind of change things up a little bit with this whole as a service world and cloud world and things like that. So I think we're going to have a lot of really good material for you. I see another couple of folks just joined, so welcome aboard. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. We got a lot of different time zones involved in this class, so we're also going to be recording this, so we can send that out as well. But I really want you to stay put for the call to action, because the call to action, if you're still on during the call to action, you'll be able to hopefully get some tremendous value, financial value out of what we're going to be doing. So anyway, with that, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. My name is Doug Jury. I'm the Vice President of Partner Marketing here at Zadara. I've been with Zadara pretty much since we started back in 2011. And I'd also like to introduce Wade Chen. Wade, would you like to say hello to the kind folks out here?
Hello, kind folks out there. Very nice to meet everybody.
Thanks, Wade. A man of few words. Perfect. Well, he's gonna kick this off here pretty soon. So thanks, Wade, for joining. So what we're going to do today is we're going to introduce Zenlayer Technical Solutions as well as Zadara. We promised part of the title, in fact, let me go back here, 5 ways to save costs and improve performance of your global infrastructures. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about those 5 problems that we're going to hopefully solve here in the next few minutes. Imagine if you could solve 5 problems in an hour, every hour of your day. Wow, that would be tremendous, wouldn't it? So we're going to talk about Z storage, isolation, what I call these edgy configurations, the configurations that might take you out to the edge and help you with latency and some of the things that we want to solve for you. We're going to go through 4 different use cases, kind of a digital transformation. Everybody's using the word digital transformation today, so we'll go ahead and jump on that pile and talk about that a little bit. Edge to core. But the biggest one from there is going to be, we're going to talk about on-ramp to Zenlayer. And I like to talk about the bumps in the road as we go through technology. When do you either have to take things down to move or migrate or hydrate or whatever we're going to call there. So we're going to basically spend some time on the on-ramp to Zenlayer and then a ransomware solution with everything that's going on in our world today. We definitely want to talk a little bit about ransomware and how we might be able to mitigate that as well. Then we're going to do a summary and a call to action, and we'll basically talk about how we can maybe give a little bit back to you folks for your 30 or your 60 minutes here. So again, let's go ahead. For you folks that just joined, it's Doug Jury on the line as well as Wade Chen. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Wade, and he's going to talk about Zenlayer by the numbers and some of what Zenlayer does amazingly well. So over to you, Wade.
Thank you, Doug. Highly appreciate that. So, this slide just shows, Zenlayer by the numbers, and we definitely want to talk through what part Zenlayer plays in helping to increase global performance. The first thing that we can talk about is our emerging market expertise. We've got 20 terabits of global backbone capacity. That's over 230 private lines and more than 1,000 peers across the globe. The size of our footprint is about 180 plus data centers. We're actually over 185 at this point. That's in 37 different countries across 6 continents where we have helped our customers to deploy their infrastructure and network. Operational excellence wise, we have a 24/7 global tech support, typically less than 15 minutes response time, and resolving times in under 4 hours. The size of our footprints are around 60,000 devices, which we operate globally, as well as 600 plus networking points and a 99.99% uptime. What we do is we strive to provide a similar experience across multiple locations. So, working with us, you're able to access any one of these locations across the world. Next slide, please. So, picture is worth 1,000 words. You saw us by the numbers. This is what it looks like across the world, right? It looks a little bit messy sometimes, but that's because there's a lot of dots on there, 180 plus edge points, as we mentioned. In a lot of these locations, we may be working with top players in the data center and the co-location space. We work with a lot of the peers in terms of the network, usually the tier 1 carriers and incumbents that are within those regions to make sure that you have the best performance and it's optimized for that, right? So one of the things we're talking about today is how to save costs and improve performance. An easy example of that is using local providers to serve content from within a country. A good example of that, Vietnam. If you were able to locate your gear inside of that country and leverage the network there, maybe it'll cost something like $1 a meg. But if you were to do that internationally or leverage their international capacity from within Vietnam to reach out, it could be 10 times that cost, right? So there's a huge savings just there. Not only that, if you have desire to go into India, you would have to negotiate with carriers, identify the data centers, ship in your hardwares, send people there, put them in a hotel, and set everything up, along with making sure everything gets there on time so that you're not spending too much time there. And then if you were looking at a global deployment across multiple locations, then that makes it even more fun to coordinate everything. So that's something that Zenlayer is really good at helping to move forward and push through. Next slide, please. So a couple of things that we're able to provide in terms of experience in the edge cloud. We allow you to leverage compute with bare metal clouds or your custom build within the data centers that we can help you design and deploy. The networking as well, so that we can provide you with the local IP transit as well as any interconnectivity or private lines between data centers and to last mile locations, right? As a lot of people are moving to hybrid clouds, as well as looking how to on-ramp into these and connect the networks together. And if you don't want to deal with any of that, we provide an application layer for both content delivery and a global intelligent accelerator that leverages our footprint and allows you to simply deploy on top of our infrastructure and leverage that without actually doing anything else. So we try to give you a very easy experience to deploy your infrastructure globally and leverage anything. Next slide, please, Doug. So one of the things that we had talked about is why people maybe need this kind of a global network or why they want to increase the performance. In this case, we like to share a simple case study. There are a lot of game publishers, and we understand that gamers are very sensitive to latency. If they can't get a good performing game server, they will be pretty upset. In that case, a lot of our bare metal servers just help to do that by providing the customers a much better experience and also deploying these at the edge. What we did for one of these customers is that over the period of 6 months, we deployed 1,100 bare metal servers across 5 different continents, especially into these emerging markets such as Brazil and Philippines. We allow them to create their own Linux server clusters, as well as the computing server farms, and then their own operation support systems. And this is unique because they may not be able to build this in a pure cloud environment. They need a lot of customization on how certain things are networked, which carriers they want to bring in, as well as connectivity back into these clouds. So by allowing us to help them do this, we deployed these servers across multiple countries, and then they've achieved 25 milliseconds of latency for their users across the globe. So this is a pretty interesting case study that we've put together for a lot of our customers, and we can talk through that if there's are any questions around that. Doug, next slide, please. Okay, so this is actually a simple architecture overview of how we can work with Zadara and Zenlayer to literally drop in a plug and play in any of our locations with this kind of a custom build. What this is showing is just the ability to drop in Zadara's hardware anywhere in our 180 plus locations around the globe, and then instantly be able to provide network as well as compute, and then interconnect these with clouds, various clouds around the world. You can see this talks about Beijing, LA, Moscow, Frankfurt, and Washington, and also New York, right? Just the ability to really set up this global network for our customers at the drop of a hat without them having to really think about the logistics as well as negotiate all of these different agreements to put this in place has been something that we've done for a lot of our clients. And I think that's one of the key points about how we can help with the global performance and then save some money in this case. Doug?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Wade. Appreciate that. You can see why we at Zadara love working with Zenlayer is because we can see here we have 300 plus clouds. They have 180 plus sites. We have about 280 petabytes deployed around the world. You take their bare metal services, take our storage as a service, which we're going to talk about here in pretty good detail. And you take this and marry it up with a network that gets you 25 millisecond latency between the whole area and the world. I mean, you end up with an amazing network. If I look at this this map here, and I didn't overlay all of the Zenlayer, I just took some of them as examples of what's happening in the U.S. 3 across the site or across the U.S. But when I first did this map 10 years ago, there was one little flag over here for Zadara. It was in Ashburn, Virginia, and it wasn't a particularly interesting map. But over 10 years, you can see what we've done is we basically flourished around the world itself. I love to talk about edge solutions, and I love to talk about a couple of examples. In the Peruvian mountains over here, we have a mining operation customer that they need to have their data very, very close to the edge, very, very close to where the data is. They're doing geological soundings, they're doing business as well, and so they needed to have technology there, but they wanted to jump in on the cloud, wanted to jump in as a service. They wanted to do that, so basically we put our flag up in the mountains there. We also have sites up in the same exact company, but up here in the central part of Canada, their edge. We have customers out here in Alaska that's in the edge as well. A lot of times customers thought to themselves, well, I can't move to these AWS sites. I can't go. I don't live in these areas. I mean, I may be in Southern Cal here, and I'm really glad to know that Zenlayer is available to help me here. But I may not be where these AWS or Azure sites are, and now I have the opportunity to do what we call Zadara Edge Cloud Services to be able to do this kind of work here. So anyway, it's a very extensive map. If you see your city or your town or your location on this map, absolutely we can help you folks out with those kind of things. Now, one thing I'm really proud of is that there's always an interesting story behind vendors and things like that. And I've just started to become a Formula One fan. I really hadn't been in the past, but we're basically part of the Alfa Romeo racing team for Formula One cars. And what happens is these cars are going around. Think of this car as a big Internet of Things. I mean, I know you know that your refrigerator and your dishwasher and all that's an Internet of Things. Well, this car is too. It's basically creating all kinds of data that basically comes off the car, not only during race time, but also after to analyze what's going on here. So basically, we are the official cloud supplier of Alfa Romeo for this particular racing team. And we're very proud of that. As you see the car go by at 200 plus miles per hour, you'll see the Zadara logo here, and also the drivers. There's 2 drivers, primary drivers. I watch Kimi quite a bit, and we watch what's going on here. So they've scrutinized cloud solutions. They've got a lot at stake here, and they've scrutinized a lot of solutions, and we're really glad that they've chosen us to be their cloud provider. So just kind of an interesting anecdote. If you go out on our webpage, there's a lot of collateral and a lot of things you can look at for Formula One. So let's talk about the 5 things that I would like to bring up today on this call. The 5 ways to save cost and improve performance. That's what we're talking about today. And so I've also threaded through this presentation. I love tidiness in a presentation. I love the storytelling. And I've basically created these icons here to remind you as I go through the next few slides. I'm going to remind you of some sort of the topic that we're talking about here, whether it be move data between clouds and perhaps repatriate, CapEx to OpEx, edge, lower latency maybe is what your needs are, partners you know and trust, and then maybe this technology refresh piece and so forth. So if we look at the far left, there's a lot of companies out there, a lot of customers that have gone all into the AWS or Azure cloud, and that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but once you get there, you might realize that maybe it isn't exactly what you thought. Maybe the cost of egress or ingress is a little too high, perhaps, or maybe you can't get consistent performance. Maybe there's other people in this noisy neighbor environment that basically mitigate some of the things that you need to do. So there are people that are moving some of their applications away, but they've already sort of gotten rid of their data center. They don't want to move back to a data center and crank that back up again. So a good place to go is to give a cloud-like financial model, give cloud-like spin up, spin down, things like that, but basically move it to maybe a location that you saw on one of these previous maps. So that's the first one. Moving data between is sometimes one of the largest challenges that people have today. How do we model storage as a service, CapEx to OpEx? Select a partner, hopefully that has this 100% pay as you go. There are a lot of, I'm going to talk about this in just a moment. There are a lot of companies that have sort of put a little bit of window dressing around their products to say, oh, we're OpEx. But I'm going to share with you, stick with me, I'm going to share with you why our product was designed from the ground up to do this kind of work. Need cloud services closer to the source of the data. That's a big one, especially for you Linux people out there that are going to be, doing an awful lot of, churning of the data, or maybe genetics, genomes, all this, maybe a video, all those kind of things where you need the data to be somewhat closer to it. You don't want to pay the price for higher latencies. You want higher performance and things like that. So that's really what this whole move of edge is all about, is moving the resources along with Zenlayer's bare metal. You move the storage as a service over to Zadara, and now you have this really cool edge solution that we're going to talk about in more detail. Utilize local partnerships. I know it's always best to to work with somebody that I know, somebody that's smaller perhaps, whether it be your insurance company and work with a local agent, or work with an edge here or a cloud partner here. I don't want to be just a simple number. So partners that you know and trust, I think, is a big way to save costs and also improve the performance and the scalability of what you're doing. And then we're going to talk a little bit about needing to keep your IT resources current at a reduced cost. Move to new technology when the timing is right. And I've got so many great stories for you here. So we'll basically talk about that. So I'm gonna bring up a polling question. Everybody get ready. I'm going to bring up a polling question. So let's go ahead and bring this up right now. And I'm going to launch it right now. Okay, so where do you deploy most of your IT resources today? And basically, we're going to select hyperclouds like AWS or Azure. We're going to select MSP locations, on-premises, or co-location. So where do you deploy most of your IT resources today? And you only get to pick one. So I see people are starting to select their environments. Keep on going. You're doing a great job. Looks like we got a couple more people coming in. And all right, I'm going to close the poll in 3, 2, 1. Anybody else? Okay, we're going to close the poll. We're going to go ahead and share the results. So where do you deploy most of your IT resources today? Very interesting, because I see this a lot. I do a lot of these webinars. Hyperclouds like AWS or Azure, 20%. Co-location sites, 20%. So people have said, okay, I want to move away from my data center. I haven't committed to the cloud, but basically I want to kind of get it off of my dirt, if you will, off of my data center. And then on-premises is 60. Interesting, no MSP locations out there today. That's usually a lower number. It's not usually zero, but on-prem. So I've got a lot of customers here that are basically still doing the on-premises and so forth. I'm assuming that they're still maybe doing a fair amount of CapEx or whatever, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and hide that, and I'm going to go ahead and keep going here. So these are the 5 things that we want to talk about today. So allow me to keep plowing forward here. Thank you for those that polling question. Now, Zadara was, I've been in the industry, I've been doing storage for about 44 years. Sad to say I've been doing this job for 44 years, but you know what? Great to say that I still love it. I love talking to you folks, whether it be through these meetings or through face-to-face. So Zadara was the only product that I can remember that basically where the business model was created before the product was designed. Now, what do I mean by that is basically we said back in 2011, how do we want to bring this product to market? What are the things that we want to do before we even design the product? So let's go into these 3 spheres here, or these 3 quadrants here. Enterprise grade performance and security. Remember, we wanted to design this as a storage element, a storage company. We all had a lot of storage background. So we said, okay, we want to build the best in class storage device out there. We want to have SSDs and hard drives, which will become very germane to this conversation in just a moment. In-flight and at-rest encryption, snapshots, mirroring, that to me is table stakes. If you don't have that, you don't have anything. So we said, okay, we want to build this. This is what we want to do. But this is where things change dramatically. I want to build this in a fashion. I don't want to just take a standard product and put a business model on top of it. I want to build inside the product the ability to deploy this on-prem, co-location, and in the clouds. I want to be able to scale up and down. I want to basically be able to be agile to the point where I need 100 terabytes more today and I need 100 terabytes less tomorrow. I want to go up and down, and I only want to pay for what I use. And I want to be able to do hardware and software upgrades on the fly. And I want to make this all OpEx. That sounds like a pretty simple task, doesn't it? I want to do all these things. I want to create a cloud environment, if you will. And now I want to move it to the edge. I want to put it in your data center. I want to put it wherever. I want the pricing to be the same. And if I move over to the far right, I want this to be managed. I just showed you 300 plus sites. And it's fair to say we haven't visited 99% of those sites. We don't need to go to these sites to manage it or install it or things like that. It's all done. It's all designed from the start to be able to do that through a couple of NOCs around the world. So we have this notion of 24/7, 365 proactive support. It's got to be built in that says proactive support says, tell me when you're hurting. Tell me when you're running out of storage. Tell me when you need to do this. Tell me when your CPU is getting overrun and I need to increase the engine size perhaps, which we're going to talk about what an engine is in a moment. So I want to have this seamless migration, upgrades. I want to have all these resources built into the product, baked into the product. So now I have what I call the 3 pillars here. I have enterprise grade performance and security with all the things that you need. I want to have this only pay for what you use up and down. And I want to have your best friend basically just a click away, monitoring and manually and taking a look at all this. A great story is that we have several customers that throughout the weeks and months, they basically might run out of storage at 3 in the morning. And our team and our product jumps into action and adds more storage to the use set, the data set, only to divert or avert a particular outage that could potentially happen. So up here, I'm reminding you that these are the 5 use cases that we're solving today as we move forward. Now, everybody has this slide. What I like to do is tell a couple of stories. And a couple of stories here is NASA. We are at the assembly building in Florida. You can see the SpaceX launch pad from the assembly building. And basically, they needed to share data across both Linux and Microsoft workspaces and work groups. And there's not a lot of products out there in this particular space that can do those kind of things. So we were able to do that, as well as going up and down. pay as you go, and then they love the technology refresh, which we're going to talk about. Verizon, I'm going to share that story with you in just a moment when we get into some of the architecture. eBuilder is basically a blueprinting type of company that basically does blueprints for builders, on sites. Omnitrax is a GPS long haul tracking system for 18-wheelers, so they can basically drive by the way stations without basically having to stop, and they're monitoring the usage of all that. So many stories. Ancestry.com is scanners and things like that coming in, digital transformation and so forth. If you made a reservation at a Great Wolves Resort, that's probably going to be, or it's going to be on through their Opera system. That's going to be on a Zadara piece of storage out in the cloud. So really cool stories. Really, we're solving a lot of business problems that are giving customers more performance at a reduced cost and more control, if you will. So let's talk about Z storage. Virtual Private Storage Array, VPSA, just rolls off the tongue, can be configured and reconfigured on the fly for any storage workload. This was the design. This was the model. The business model was created, and then we created the product. So what we said when we started to design this, or the business model, is we want to be able to support all the media types. We don't believe, I don't know if you do, we don't believe that the whole world is all SSD today. Clearly, the amount of hard drives that are being shipped today says that that's not the case. So we said, we don't want to force fit somebody into more expensive SSD drives. Let's say your data doesn't deduplicate. Well, you're going to pay a much larger fee for SSDs than you would hard drives. So we said, all right, we're going to give customer choice. We're going to say hard drives. Hybrid is hard drives with a caching layer, an SSD layer, the best of both worlds. If you can fit into that, you're going to save a lot of money. So that's the left-hand side here. The right-hand side over here is block, file, and object. Now, let's talk about silos for a moment. A lot of people buy best in breed for block. They buy best in breed for file. They buy best in breed for object. We said, our business model said, why are we going to put our customers through the wear and tear of having to have three different things to learn, to study, to develop, to have stock spares, all these other things? Let's basically do this in what we call multi-tenant architecture and single tenant experience. Hang with me for 4 more slides, and I'm going to define multi-tenant architecture, single tenant experience. So stay right there. So block, file, and object all running in the same multi-tenancy or multi-tenant world, but everybody has their own piece of the pie, their own slice. That's what our patents are all about. So in this case, I could have file, block, and object running in the same architecture on hard drives or SSDs. And I can also put together a business model that says I can put this in your colo, which you folks said 20% was colo, you said 20% was cloud, and you said 60% was your data center. I didn't set that poll up to get those answers, but look at that. You answered my question right here, and that's exactly where we want to start addressing some of these needs. Doesn't matter to me where you are. So now I have the ability to move things between clouds and sites, and I'm also going to move it maybe out to the site that's closest to your environment, perhaps in a co-location, and we'll talk about that in just a sec. So what you do is you go to an e-commerce page or a provisioning page, and we say, okay, I would like to create a VPSA, virtual private storage array, or an object storage. Looks exactly the same, creation. And I'm going to do this in the Zenlayer site, and here we have Zenlayer LA. And I'm going to create some object storage, and I'm basically gonna set it all up. There's like 5 screens behind this, and you're going to select the drives and the engine, and you're going to select those very easy things to do. And then once you hit the create button, okay, here comes the cool slide, I call it. When I talk to customers face to face and I go through this slide, I get a lot of responses like, that's pretty cool. Well, this is our patents. This is really what really designed and started the Zadara thought process here and the thought leadership in the industry. Okay, so what we're doing here is when you go to those creation screens that I just showed you, we'll just talk about VPSA number 1 for a moment. So, some of those screens behind the creation screen was saying, how big an engine do you want? Now, an engine is just a RAID controller or a storage area network controller, and it's made up of cores. So here I have 2 cores here for active, and I have 2 cores here that are passive right here, or standby. So I have 2 and 2. Okay, so that now is a 400 engine, we call it. 400, 4, 2 plus 2 is 4, 400 engine, and I've selected 4 drives here. Now, this is what the big idea was 11 or 10 years ago, was to give everybody in a public domain their own physical resources. So these physical drives are physical drives that are owned by a customer. Those cores are physical cores owned by a customer. It's not bifurcating or segmenting or sharing the resources. This is now, we're literally carving resources out of this multi-tenant architecture stack to give everybody a single tenant experience. So what does that mean? When you log in, you have your own login, your own credentials, your own encryption schedule, snapshot schedule, DR schedule, drives, cores, cache, memory, everything is basically committed to this particular customer here for VPSA number 1. Now, let me talk about the Verizon story, which I promised. Verizon came to us and said, we need to know that our data is on our own drives that are owned by us. Amazon said they can't do that. Azure said they can't do that because they create these large pools. Can you basically tell me that if I buy 4 or 8 or 10 drives, that those are physical drives to me? And I said, yes, I can tell you that. Those are physically associated to you. And I said, why do you care? And they said, if this drive fails, I need you to ship that drive back to me so I can physically have it shredded for security. And I said, okay, we can do that. And so Verizon's been a customer of ours now for about 6 years because of this architecture. Now, another thing I want to do is train your eyes off to the left here. SSD drives runs this application. Hard drives and cache runs this application. And hard drives, which is object storage with immutability, runs this application. So I have, not only do I have my choice of file block and object, but I can now optimize the performance tier that I want, all designed from the start up to do this work in a single tenant experience. So this is basically what this is all about. Okay, I'll take some questions later on, or you can type them in, and I'll basically be able to read those as well. But this is the epitome of what we do. Now, if I take this icon, remember I said I'm kind of a tidy person when I do presentations. So I like to take this icon now. Now the question is, where do I put it? And where I put it is completely up to you. I can put this in an MSP environment like Zenlayer, 180 sites across the world. So you can basically do file, block, object, wherever you want. I can do this in a co-location facility. There were people out there that did that. I can also put this on-prem. So this is where this hardware stack will go. And I also have this kind of bonus. We are also cloud adjacent into the hyperclouds, which means that I'm about a 1 millisecond away from all of the AWS and Azure clouds out there. So I can now, using their products like Direct Connect or ExpressRoute, I can now use this as the storage solution into AWS Compute if you wish to do that. Now, if you're in a Zenlayer site, you'll use their bare metal servers in here. So you won't need to buy servers again in there if you're an MSP site. So a lot of our customers move into Zenlayer's MSP sites, and they don't even have to have a rack. They don't even have to have anything. They go bare metal servers, Zadara storage as a service, and basically you can create an entire environment. But you can do it where you want it, not basically where AWS or Azure tells you it has to be. So again, reminding you, move between clouds, easy. CapEx to OpEx. This whole screen is OpEx. Edge, lower latency, of course, and then partners you know and trust. We've introduced this into there. So I'm going to do another polling question. Everybody get ready with your mice. And I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll. List the reasons that you consider when looking at private or public cloud migration. Agile IT resources that are always on demand, OpEx business model, technology that never grows old, someone else upgrades, and lower overall costs. So help me here. List the reasons that you consider when looking at private or public cloud migration. So I see people coming in. I'll go ahead and wait. Everybody start clicking. All right, everybody's finding their way here. And you can choose all that apply here. So the number is going to be bigger than 100%, of course. All right, all done. All right, perfect. I'm going to go ahead and close out this poll. I'm going to go ahead and share the results. So agile IT resources that are always on demand, 25. Well, let's start at the top. OpEx business model, 75%. Interesting. So the folks, let me extrapolate here a little bit. The folks that are on-prem, as they start to consider maybe a public cloud, they're going to be moving on-prem, which is CapEx, perhaps over to their OpEx business. Technologies that never grow old. We're going to talk about that, so stick tight. Lower overall costs. So you're going to do it for cost purposes, and then agile IT resources that are always on demand, and that's a perfect solution for that. So thank you. I hope everybody's learning a little bit from the polling questions as well, because I know I learn with an audience like you folks as well. So here we are. We're talking about any location. We're talking about Z storage in all these different facilities. Now let's bring up some use cases. We've got about 25 minutes left here, 20 minutes left to go through some of this. So here we have an edge collection and cloud creation digital transformation. We work a lot with AWS. Zenlayer works a lot with AWS, so I wanted to kind of premiere a little bit of an application that might work for AWS as well. So in this particular case, the data comes in through scanners, and basically it goes through the customer's compute and our storage. So we put our storage out at the edge. Customer has some compute here, and they're basically moving in, and this particular application is scanning in millions of copies of data a week, in the petabytes of data a week, okay? So now this is just raw data coming in, and it's sitting here on some storage. And now what we're going to do is we're going to move that data 2,000 miles across the country onto some more Z storage. So this basically is our mirroring solution that's doing this. And then they're basically enabling some AWS compute, EC2, as most of you might know that name. And they're using this to actually do the derivatives, create the PDF files, basically do character recognition, all those other things that might take place over here. Thousands of servers over here basically taking care of these millions of files, if you will, or these pieces. So the edge can't move to Amazon. They have to do this work locally, because that's where their people are and that's where their scanners are. So that's that human element that has to move it in. But they can certainly move the data to a hospitable edge or a place where they can actually start to compute on some of this data as well. So it's a perfect example. And then we also have the ability to kick this out to AWS S3. So now this data can be accessed using HTML and basically being able to use object storage to be able to do this particular use case there. So we've converted this application over here. Used to be somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think it was around 19 racks of storage that was owned, is now been converted because of the density of the 14 terabyte drives and so forth. It's been converted down to about a half a rack, same amount of storage. It's all OpEx now. And now the latency is really fast here. And then we move the data across the country. And now the latency is very fast here to actually do the transformation. So a really cool application here that needs to be edge and also needs the power, in this case, of the EC2 servers in Amazon. Another really cool edge configuration is, I'm going to just kind of pick on, I don't know how many people out here are in the Southern California area. Zenlayer has a great configuration set up there, not only with their bare metal, but also with my storage. So I wanted to kind of compare, contrast. If you're close enough to the site, and I'm talking about what's close enough, maybe 60 or 70 milliseconds, you can use a VPN and you can directly connect into an edge or a core, I should say, in this case. So you can remote in. We've got a customer in Atlanta that's basically connected into another facility up in Virginia area, and they're using that for their files, their CIFS, their NFS, those kind of mount points. So 60 or 70 milliseconds for you probably don't even know this, but your email, when you get your Gmail in the morning, you're probably running at 150 to 200 milliseconds on average when you load your email. So here, this is a perfect case for a small remote site to just connect into Zenlayer using perhaps a VPN or whatever. But if you need to have some resources like we did in that previous one, if you need to have some resources that are physically in your office, but again, you told me in the polling question that 75% of you wanted to start moving to an OpEx business model. So if I want to move my storage that's here in CapEx land, and I want to move it to OpEx, scale up, scale down, only pay for what I need, technology refresh, if somebody else manages it for you, then we can basically just land that out there. And then we can use this as a DR or a backup tier, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment when we talk about ransomware. So here we have a lot of state and local education and government SLED accounts, and what they do is they have their cameras here, and the cameras basically will be maybe a particular squadron or a particular police department or whatever will have 10 or 15 or 20 agents, and they'll have their cameras, and that each camera will go to its own VPSA. Remember, I said it's isolated. So each isolation says it has its own credentials, its own login, its own chain of custody. Let's call it that. So now each VPSA represents its own chain of custody for these series of cameras, perhaps. So we can do that quite easily for maybe a state and local government and things like that. And then down here, just offices and departments, of course. So when we start talking about edge, a lot of times edge was always, that's the stuff that I have to buy, and the core is maybe a bit more like cloud. But in this particular case, a good chunk of this can basically be moved into an OpEx model, lowering your overall cost, increasing your agility, and so forth. So let's say that I ship you a whole bunch of SSD drives, and you call me up or you call Zenlayer up in a month or so, and you say, you shipped me a whole bunch of SSD drives, but I really needed more high capacity hard drives. Can I ship you back 20 or 30 of these SSD solid state drives, and can you ship me out the higher density, lower cost drives, because that seems to be what I need? And our answer together, Zenlayer, Wade, and myself, is going to be, well, of course we can. You don't own it. It's a service. You can swap it out. So we'll ship you 30 of these hard drives, and you'll ship us back the 30 solid state drives. You can't get it wrong. Okay, so that's really the whole model here. Now, this is the one I love, is if you're struggling right now in this environment where you really do want to move to perhaps an OpEx model or a cloud model or something like that, people are really struggling. So I want to make sure that you understand the cost implications here. So here, let's say I ship to you on-prem a particular amount of storage, and I just put XYZ terabytes. And so that costs you $5,000 a month. It's just purely an example. I'm not doing any sizing or quoting or whatever here. It's just a number. So I put it all here, and you use it, and you start to use my Z storage. And then after the first 4 months or so, you start to migrate the data over here. We have a full migration suite. Zenlayer has a migration suite. We know how to move this data over without a bump in the road or very, very small bump in the road. And now you've moved it over. So you've got half your terabytes here and half here. Oh, look, the price is still $5,000. And now I'm going to basically move all the data, the rest of the data over, and it's 0 terabytes here and all your terabytes over here. So now it's still $5,000. It's exactly what you consume, regardless of where you consume it. Okay, that's the key element to this, regardless of where you consume it. So how do I do this in an architectural manner? Is I do it this way. You have your primary storage over here that's maybe technology refresh. Maybe it's coming end of life. Maybe if you're on this phone today and you're on this call and you've got a piece of storage, I don't care if it's 50 terabytes, 100 terabytes, 500 terabytes. If you've got something that is going on end of life or technology refresh, we can basically put as much storage as you need in your data center, and then you'll start to migrate the data over using traditional tools like mirroring, rsync, arbocopy. When you start to use this data as production, that's the first little bump in the road. You just got to remount your servers. Okay, now you're testing it. One of the big risky things of any migration is my new storage going to behave and work as well as my old storage? And I'll pretty much guarantee you that it's going to probably be much better, because this is probably 3 or 4 or 5 years old. So now I get to test it before I start to commit the whole migration. So that works pretty good. Now I'm going to mirror the data over to Zenlayer, but I'm not going to commit to it. I'm going to test it over here. And once I realize that these applications that I have sponsored here are working well, I break the mirror, and I start to, another bump in the road is I remount over here, and now I'm up and running and things are great. And I have successfully hydrated from my old technology refresh to a Zenlayer facility without any risk and 2 little bumps in the road, remount here and remount here. Then you simply ship the Zadara storage back to me, and you never paid more than the $5,000 if that was the quote that we had offered you. So, a polling question. Here we go. Regarding this particular on-ramp use case, what are you seeing? Use case, are you seeing any of the following? So choose all that apply. You're moving to a cloud and don't want to purchase additions. You would like stable pricing regardless of the location. Needing an as-a-service IT solution closer to where your data is, or moving to the cloud will offer you lower price and agility and OpEx. So let's go ahead and keep those cards and letters coming in. All right. Interesting. I love watching the responses come in. All right, everybody done? Show of hands. Everybody's okay? No more chances? Okay, I'm going to close the poll. I'm going to share the results. Regarding the on-ramp use cases, nobody said that you're moving to a cloud and don't want to purchase additions. That was interesting. But you would like stable pricing. That's kind of the same. So maybe you could have clicked on both, but you would like stable pricing regardless of the location. Needing an as-a-service IT solution closer to where the data is. That's quite interesting too. So that talks about edge, and then moving to the cloud will offer you the pricing agility and OpEx, which we talked about in the past. So I hope everybody's learning from some of these as to what your what people next to you in this virtual classroom are talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and hide that up. Okay, I had a question about mirroring. So we're talking about mirroring here. And the question is, for mirroring, can I use the data at the DR site for test and dev? So let's say that this wasn't an on-ramp to a conversation, but it was just simply, I wanted to keep my data here on-prem, and I wanted to mirror the data over to Zenlayer. Could I use this data? Well, the answer is absolutely. That's real data over here, some real disk. I can do a snapshot. I can do an instantaneous clone, and that clone can then be presented to Linux or Microsoft servers for testing, for deep archive, for whatever you want it to be. I'll give you a good example. We have a customer that sells sneakers. They do a lot of things online, but they sell sneakers. And so what they do is they take the data and they create a mirror for safekeeping, and the data is in their Atlanta data center, and they basically then they'll dig a snapshot and a clone, and they'll analyze the data. Of course, they're in their marketing department. They analyze the data, and they'll say, okay, what color sneakers sell best in Dallas? And they'll analyze all the data across the country, and they'll find out that green sneakers are selling well in Dallas. So now all their data, all their marketing and advertisement will basically be green sneakers in perhaps Dallas. So they're not impacting their point of sale. They're only using that data to analyze and create with marketing materials and so forth. So great question. Thank you for entering that in on the mirroring. Can we use the data? Now we're gonna take this ransomware use case a little bit. Everybody, it's first and foremost in everybody's brains. And I think about this on my own little Mac here that I'm running. I'm always thinking about, do I have a backup? Is the backup going to be good? If something happened to me and I got the phone call or an email, would I be able to do something appropriate? So we partner a lot with Veeam. Zenlayer partners a lot with Veeam. They're a VCSP partner. And so Veeam has come out with this notion of 32110. They call that the zip code. And I'm going to define that. Remember, in my VPSA creation screen, I basically said that we can create a performance tier using SSD drives and block. We can create a capacity tier using hard drives, perhaps caching. And I can also create an object storage tier with record lock and immutability for perhaps my ransomware protection. So I'm gonna maybe put this piece of storage in the customer's data center. and I'm going to now create a performance tier. I want that close to the data because if you need to recover something quickly, it needs to be sort of data center speeds perhaps. So I want to be able to recover that very quickly. And there's your primary. So that's three different copies of the data. I have that. If we don't want to have this one here or this one here, we can basically drop down to 1, 2, 3 copies. But I'm showing kind of the full venture here. 2 different media types. In this case, we have block and immutable object. So we've checked that box. One is offsite. In this case, the immutability is offsite in a Zenlayer facility, perhaps. One is airlocked, air gapped, and immutable. You can set up the timer, and you can say everybody may know what a write once and read many, a worm drive is. And write once and read many says you cannot edit the data. Well, what they've done here with immutability and record lock is the ability to, once you write the data, you can date it, you can time it, you can say, you can't touch this data for 15 days, 30 days, 45 days, whatever it happens to be. Remember the way ransomware works is they usually put some type of a Trojan horse in there, and then they don't do anything with it for 30 or 45 days, thinking that it's so connected to your backup thread that you won't be able to recover because it's in your backup thread. Well, in this particular case, I can recover from this object storage tier without worrying about it because it hasn't been overwritten. It's not possible for it to be overwritten with the combination of this technology and the smart brains of Wade and his team. Now, I can also do what we call data lab. So I can now spin up, on demand. I can have them spin up on demand and they can test it and say, if something happened, would I be able to recover? Would I actually be able to recover? University of Texas did a study that said 50% of all backups cannot recover the data. 50%, that's a huge number. 50%, if they haven't been tested, you don't know. So this whole data lab and VCSP, you really have to, if you have any question marks at all in your mind as you're watching this, that you don't know whether you've got at least this done, Wade and his team will give you an audit. They'll basically just kind of ask the right questions and they'll sort of put this all together for you. Your day-to-day experience with Zadara and Zenlayer is, I think, a little different. We wake up every morning thinking about our customers. It's not like we send out we receive a purchase order, we sell you goods and and then we go away. We're a service business. We're constantly thinking about our customers, how we can make things better. We're watching the store. We're making sure you don't run out of storage. We do all these things. And I think that probably aids to the support of these 5 nines of guaranteed uptime. Our SLA when we designed this product was 99.999. We're actually getting better than that. We're getting 99.9995. And then we basically give back on a credit basis anything that's failed prior or anything that's failed if it has. But I'll tell you, I've been here since the start, and we basically credited back very few. If you were on AWS a couple of weeks ago, there was an AWS outage. They would have been paying back to this kind of a model into your contract. But we basically didn't have to worry about that because we don't have we don't have any outages whatsoever. And the reason for that is our architecture, our highly available architecture with those storage nodes and the disks and everything else, and us basically paying attention to what you're doing. So we're going to come up to this action items in just a couple more slides, and we're going to move into that pretty quickly. An interesting story that I had, I was visiting a customer in Salt Lake City, and they said, I said, okay, so Bob, why am I here? And he goes, well, I own a network appliance. And he said, I said, okay, how much do you own? He goes, about 500 terabytes. I said, okay, perfect. How much are you using? He goes, about 250. I said, all right, about 50% utilized. That's about right. I said, why am I here? And he said, they've asked me to do a technology refresh. And they said that they're going to either increase the maintenance fees or, I'm going to have to do this technology refresh. And I said, okay. He said, I don't want to buy another 500 terabytes, but they're telling me that's kind of the sweet spot for price. I said, well, why would you spend 500? Why would you buy 500 terabytes if you're only using 250? And he said, yeah, that's why you're here. And I said, all right, what if I put 350 terabytes in your site? You use 250. If you need more than 350 as you grow, I'll send out new technology free of charge. And basically, if you don't need that much, then we're only going to charge you for what you're consuming. And we're going to ebb and flow. We're going to go up and down. And we're going to basically see, we're going to draft behind what your actual consumption is. He said, that sounds like a great model. That's exactly why you're here. And that's what I really want to be working towards. And then he asked me the question, he goes, how do you keep things fresh and new, and how do you do technology refresh? And I said, well, you see this little yellow line here. This yellow line says that I can actually drop and save you some money below what your consumption is. And he looks at me funny and he said, well, how would you do that? And I said, well, if you look at historical data, we basically know that the cost of hard drives has fallen and they've become more dense. The cost of solid state drives has fallen and the capacity has gotten more dense. So therefore, if you're using 500 terabytes, but I'm putting you on a more dense drive, theoretically, your price could drop down. And so what we do is periodically we look at our customers. If you have a 6 terabyte drive, 10 terabyte drive, 14 terabyte drive, we're going to basically offer you a technology refresh. And you don't spend a nickel on the technology refresh. All you're going to do is say, yes, I would like to refresh these applications, and we'll basically make sure that the appropriate technology gets shipped out to you. That technology refresh, one of the 5 problems that we're solving today. And also this constant of 24/7, 365 management, 100% guarantees of uptime and things like that. We've built around this product not only the internal workings that alerts people and alerts us and tells us when it hurts, but it also alerts us when you're just simply running out of room, thresholds, things like that. This hardware technology refresh and upgrades we talked about, our DevOps team is second to none. They know better about a lot of these public clouds and even the public cloud people, and you can basically get, and as well as the Zenlayer folks and Wade and his team, they know this technology extremely well. I had another question here when we were talking about SSDs and hard drives. It says multi-tenancy, Doug. Can I mix SSD drives and hard drives in the same VPSA? And so the answer is yes, you can have one VPSA with SSD drives and also hard drives in the same VPSA, but you're going to probably create 2 different quality of service pools. The quality of service pool is going to be a high performance pool, and the other one is going to be a capacity pool or file share, NFS, CIFS, whatever. But basically we can make one login and one set of credentials for both of those use cases. And remember, you're going to go off and carve off NAS, you're going to carve off block, you're going to carve off object storage, you're going to do all those things. So I think that really is going to allow you to basically control exactly what you want. Now, let's go ahead and recap, and then we're going to get into the call to action. So what we've done is, hopefully in the last 50 minutes, what I've done, if I've done my job, I've said you can migrate data between clouds, DCs, and colos with very small bumps in the road. We can basically show you how to model storage as a service, moving from CapEx to OpEx, which you all told me that was one of your big issues that you want to do. Needing cloud services closer to the source of data on dedicated hardware. Between Zenlayer and Zadara, we have 450 sites out there of choice for you folks. So just raise your hand and do that, and tell us where you want it, and we'll basically hook that up for you. Utilize any MSP location, co-location for DR and backup repositories. Again, a plethora of sites here, and needing to keep your IT resources current at a reduced rate. We talked about technology refresh. We talked about you don't own the storage. We even talked about swapping out, prior to technology refresh, the ability to do SSD drives to hard drives and back and forth. So what we're offering today is, if you contact on sales@zenlayer.com, very simple, write that down, set up a meeting with a Zenlayer professional in the next 10 business days. So today is June 9th. When you decide to select Zenlayer and Zadara solution, you're going to receive 2 months free usage for your Z storage and your storage environment. So that could be an amazing opportunity for you folks to maybe test it, do a proof of concept, do whatever you wish there. So Wade, I'm going to bring you back up again. Would you like to say goodbye to the fine folks here?
Yeah, thank you very much, Doug. It was great to have this audience and these fine folks. I hope they were able to walk away with what you mentioned, the 5 ways to save costs and increase their global performance. We definitely look forward to hearing from them if this is something that they're looking at.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you, Wade, for your attendance as well. I love working with partners like yourself, of course. And don't miss here. Make sure that you're going to also get a recording of the session. So hopefully you took a few notes, maybe, but you can listen to this session back again. You can share it with your peers, and you can maybe use this as an opportunity to go into the boardroom or go into your meeting rooms and say, hey, we heard about this really cool technology today. I think we should at least take a look at how this might affect how we do it. It's not an all or nothing. It could be as low as 30, 40, 50 terabytes. It could be as much as 25 petabytes. Somewhere in the middle, I believe that's where you live. So thanks an awful lot. I promise to finish up at the top of the hour. We've got about 30 seconds left, so take that time back, and everybody have a great afternoon. Finish up the rest of your morning. Thank you so much.